Hi there, this is Jason from EnglishITutor.com, and this is the first in a series of live writing demonstrations I'm going to start providing. This is live writing demonstration number one for the TOEFL independent essay task. Now, what you'll see to the left there in the dark blue box, I'll just focus on that for you a little bit more, is a typical essay question for the second task in the writing section, the independent task. Now, the question there says some young adults want independence from their parents as soon as possible. Other young adults prefer to live with their families for a longer time. Which of these situations do you think is better? Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Now, that is a typical TOEFL independent question where, two sort of sides of a situation or a theory or an idea are presented to you, and the idea is you're supposed to explain which of the two generally sort of sits better with you. It's A or B, and then, support your choice. Now remember, you've only got 30 minutes, and you can see my timer down there. I've set that up so that we can actually time this essay and you can watch how I write it. I have put a series of tactics to remind you, I guess, more so than me, some of the things that I recommend to students that they think about as they're working through their essay, and that is establishing your position, do you agree with this or that? Making what I call a smart outline, as in instead of planning something out on a bit of paper first, I actually suggest that you do it inside the body of your essay, when you get started. And you'll see what I mean in a moment by that. It just saves a lot of time and actually get some writing out into that box as part of the planning process, which you can then use while you're actually writing up your essay. To then go on and develop the body part of your essay more with details and examples, to build in some concession statements. And what we mean by concession statements is little indications that you're considering both sides of the argument, that you are conceding that there are some merits or some logical reasons why the other arguments, the other side of the discussion is also valid, while continuing to argue strongly your point of view. And I'll also show you what I mean by that. Then going back and just developing your introduction and your conclusion a bit more, and then doing some more advanced things in terms of the progression and the cohesion and the vocabulary and the grammar. Now that's what I generally recommend in TOEFL Writing Mentor. It's helped a lot of people get good scores in the TOEFL. From what I've heard, I've been recommending this for a couple of years now, and people get back to me and say they scored really well on this task. So I know that these tips do work, and I'm going to demonstrate them for you here. So I'm actually going to do this essay myself live right here with you in this tutorial. I've got the timer set up there, and I'm going to talk my way through the process as I do it, because I'm a native speaker and I'm a writing teacher, so obviously if I was to sit down and do this in 30 minutes, I might do a lot better than some students. But if I'm talking and explaining a little bit as I go, it probably gives a little bit more of a fairer indication of what can be done in 30 minutes. So it won't be perfect by my standards, but I think it would still be an essay that is going to score very well in an official test situation. So let's get started. What we're going to do is start that 30-minute timer, and I'm going to write my essay and try to explain myself as I go. So there's our timer. We'll start it right now. And as I said, the first thing I'm going to do is establish my position. Now, it's generally important to not get too bogged down with the topic, and just to think about which of the two sides is probably easier for you to argue. And in my case, I think it's probably better to argue about families, young adults staying with their families for a longer time. So that's what I'm going to write. Generally speaking, I believe that it is better for all concerned if young adults continue to live, with their families for a longer time, particularly if they are going to be studying at university or something similar. Alright, so I've just got a quick introduction. Now, what I'm doing now, that's established my position. I can come back and I can develop that a little bit more later. Now what I want to do is just put in a bit of an outline. And what I call a smart outline, I build in my signpost language. First of all, it's important to consider finances. Now, I'm not going to develop that just yet, because what I'm doing now is I'm building out an outline. In addition to the importance of finances, I think this is better for a young adult's study potential. See how I've linked finances to my next idea? And my final reason there is going to be, well, I'll write finally, my signpost language. Staying at home with one's parents doesn't necessarily mean that a young adult cannot develop independence. Okay, so, and then I'm just going to write a concluding sentence now, and my conclusion will be, so by way of conclusion, based on the arguments explored above, I'm of the opinion that in most cases it's actually more beneficial for most adults to live, well, to continue living with their families for at least, well, for a longer period of time. Now let's just check our time, shall we? How much time have I used? Now I've used about 5 minutes, and what I've done in that 5 minutes is I've explained my position, and I've got 3 arguments and a bit of a conclusion. Now, I'm already well on my way to producing a decent essay, and I've still got 25 minutes to do that. What I've done is I've sort of planned it out, and I've given it some structure there. I've got an introduction, 3 body ideas, and a conclusion. And now I can go and start to develop the body of this essay. And when I mentioned the smart outline, you notice I've got my reasons, but I've also used things like first of all, I've used in addition, finally, and I've built in all that language so that there's already a sense of progression that I'm developing my topic. Now let's go in and develop these paragraphs one by one, shall we? Okay, first of all, it's important to consider finances. These days it costs a lot to rent a house, attend university, buy a car, or purchase things like health insurance. Okay, so I've just explained what I meant by finance. All right, Now what I'm going to do is kind of expand that out with an example. So by way of example, I can recall trying to live independently outside the family home as a university student, and I constantly struggled to pay bills or to pay bills and meet all the other costs of living as a student, as a young adult, I'll say. Now, before I get too wrapped up in that, I'm going to check my time again, and I've used up 2 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump over to my next paragraph and explain that a little bit more. Alright, because what I can do is just keep coming back to these ideas and add a little bit more to them. I think it's important not to get too bogged down in any one part of your essay. It's to be strategic, you really do need to keep moving back and forth through each part of your essay and just gradually developing it more and more and making sure you've got a reasonably full essay. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just go over to my next one and explain what I meant by that about the study potential. So in addition to the importance of finances, I think this is better for a young adult study potential. With your family's support, it is a lot easier to focus on your studies. You are more likely to eat better meals, have a quiet place to do schoolwork, and get a decent night's sleep. Now I'm going to support that with what I call a negative example. I can recall a friend from my university days who lived in a share house with other students. Life was a party for him, but he didn't eat or study well, and inevitably his grades suffered. He had to repeat several subjects and finished his degree later than many of his peers. Now, you notice I've just explained what I meant. If you're, if you don't have good finances and you are in a share house and you're on your own, you don't have that family support, the chances of you being able to do your studies well are reduced. And I've just explained that by using the example of a friend. Now let's just quickly check our time again. Right, so I've got 20 minutes to go. Now, if you have a look at my essay here, already in 10 minutes, I've got a reasonably good essay developing here. I've got an introduction stating my position. I've got two clear reasons. One's finances, one's your study potential. And I've still got another idea to explore here. I might quickly go down and do that because my timing's going so well. So I'll just quickly come down here and do this one. So finally, staying at home with one's parents doesn't necessarily mean that a young adult cannot develop independence. One of the good things about this technique I'm using here is that you constantly review what you have been saying. And that's a good way to pick up mistakes. If you just start right up at the top and just write non-stop right down to the bottom until the end of your time, the chances of you making grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes or vocabulary mistakes is, I think, increased. But if you're constantly going back and just quickly, rapidly rereading what you wrote, there's chances to edit what you said and pick up those kind of mistakes. So with this one here, though, finally saying, even though I spent most of my university days living with my parents, they respected me as an adult as well as their child, and they didn't attempt to interfere too much or limit my independence. I think this is the case for many other young people as well. So, I don't think it is necessarily fair to claim that just because someone is living with their family, I don't think it is necessary to claim that, put a comma there, just because someone is living with their family, they are somehow unable to enjoy benefits of independence. Now, you notice how I am dealing with the other side of the argument a bit there, and I'm using that as one of my arguments, because if we look carefully at this topic up here, it's just saying that some young adults want independence, others prefer to live with their families. And I don't think that just because you are going to live with your family that you're somehow not going to be independent. And I'm just going to add something here. I think this is the case for many young people. Well, no, I won't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check my time, and it's always important to just check how you're going. Now, I've still got 16 minutes left, so I'm doing pretty well. I've got an introduction, I've got 3 body paragraphs, and I've got a little bit of a conclusion. Now, what I've got there would probably already get me somewhere from a 3 to a 4 out of 5. But I've got time to go back and make this even better. So what I'm going to do is go back and build in some concession statements. And by concession statements I mean acknowledge the other side of the argument. And I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here and do this in the introduction as well. So I'm going to go back, and in front of that, what I've written for the introduction there, I'm going to build in a concession statement. I'm going to present the other side of that argument as a lead-in to my opinion. So let me think here. What am I going to say? Becoming an adult is a really special time in anybody's life. And the call to head out into the world and embrace our independence is, for many people, quite powerful. So becoming an adult is a really special time in anybody's life, and the call to head out into the world and embrace our independence is, for many people, quite powerful. Okay, so you notice how I've said why it's good, why some people would think that, you want to have your independence. And I'm just going to say, I think this can depend on a lot of different factors. All right, and we're going to use a colon here. For example, somebody starting a job might have different needs and priorities compared to a person who intends to go on and study at university. You notice how I'm just expanding the topic here, showing how the topic will vary based on different circumstances. And then this fits in with what I originally wrote. Generally speaking, I think it is better for all concerned if young adults continue to live with their families for a longer time, particularly if they're going to be studying. So I've created I've sort of created a sort of a narrower focus here. I'm not saying that every single person has to live at home and never become independent. I'm sort of making a context here that if you want to go on and study at university, you know, I think it's better if you stay at home longer. And I'm going to go and explain that. Now let's just check our time again. Now I've got 13 minutes left. Now this paragraph here is pretty vague, okay? And I've got, first of all, it's important to consider finances. And I'm going to build in a concession statement here. Again, I'm going to address the other side of the argument, all right? I'm going to say, certainly, it is possible for some young adults to get work and support themselves relatively quickly. And then I'm going to say, however. So you see, I said, certainly it is possible for some young adults to get a work and support themselves relatively quickly. However, and I'm just going to put in here, however, in most parts of the world these days, so I'm making a stronger argument here, because I do think that's true. In most parts of the world these days, it costs a lot to rent a house, attend university, buy a car, or purchase things like insurance. By way of example, I can recall trying to live independently outside the family home as a university student, and I constantly struggled to pay bills and meet all the other costs of living as a young adult. Now I'm going to create a link, or a progression cohesion device at the end of this paragraph to link to the next one. This in turn had adverse effects for things like my study performance. Alright, now I'm just going to change how I wrote this paragraph here. Instead of in addition, I'm going to make a sort of natural link. So I'm going to say so, or hence. Let's be a little bit more formal. Hence, in addition to the importance of family, I think it's better for a young adult study potential. And then I go on and explain that, and I've given a pretty good example there. Again, I'll just check my time. Right, I've got 10 minutes left. I'm doing all right. I'm going to build in another concession statement. So, hence, in addition to the importance of finances, I think it is better for a young adult study potential. Remember, see how I'm reviewing my writing here? To make sure that the topic flows, to make sure that my language use and sentences are good. A lot of this editing and review comes back to just rereading your work a lot. So with your family support, it's a lot easier to focus on your studies. I'm going to put in a concession statement here just to show that this is not always the case. I'm going to say, of course, for some people, in some situations, the family situation may actually be quite distracting or stressful. Okay? However, I think it would be fair to say that for many young people, it's fair to say that I'll just keep you there just to make the reader feel more involved. However, I think it would be fair to say that you are more likely to eat better meals, have a quiet place, blah, blah, and get a if you happen to be living in the family home. I can recall a friend from my university who lived in a share house with other students. Life was right, so I've got a pretty good example there just to support that. I'm just going to go back here. I'm just going to quantify what I mean by this. However, I think it would be fair to say that, and I'm just going to put this in brackets, for most people, you are, and I'm just going to say, I'm not saying that that's the case in all cases. I'm very careful to say, what I think is generally true. Okay, so let's just check our time again. How am I going? I've got 8 minutes. And I think I've already developed this paragraph here reasonably well. And again, I think I need to put in another concession statement. So, finally, staying at home with one's parents doesn't necessarily mean that a young adult cannot develop independence. I'll be the first to admit that there are families, or parents we'll say, out there who struggle to acknowledge that their children have grown up and deserve treatment as adults. Put a semicolon. It's instinctive in many of them to continue to play and I'm going to put in a mothering role that can actually be quite stifling for a young adult. Okay, so, and then I'm just going to check my time again, 6 minutes, good. And you notice how what I'm doing here is I'm saying, just because you don't live out on your own, it doesn't mean that you don't have independence. But I will be the first to admit that there are parents out there who struggle with this, who don't treat their children as adults. So, I'm showing both sides of the argument here in each of my paragraphs. Now, what I just need to do, though, is I've already said however here in my contrast, so I've got to do it a little bit differently. I've got to show a variety. I used however there as well, so I need to do things a little bit differently down here when I create that contrast. Instead of however, I could say despite this possibility, even though I spent most of my university, they respected me as an adult as well as their child, and they didn't attempt to interfere too much or limit my independence. And then I said here, I think this is the case for many other young people as well. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to claim that just because some of them, they are somehow unable to enjoy benefits of independence. And I might just add something here and just say, in fact, I think this, well, instead of saying think, because I said think a fair bit, I believe this transition is, in fact, I believe the safe environment of the family abode, using I better not say that. That's a bit over formal, I think. I believe the safe environment of the family um, is a good place to handle the transition to adulthood for all concerned, both the child and the parents. Okay, and I've just expanded my argument a bit, given it a little bit more detail. My time is down now 3 minutes. 3 minutes. I might just build out my conclusion a little bit here. I've got a nice big long essay here. The conclusion generally doesn't need to be um, all that big or detailed. Because I've developed these paragraphs quite well, generally speaking. I've put a bit of detail, I've put concession statements in there. And what can I do with the conclusion here? I might just focus a little bit on this idea of, family being really important. Um, um, Families are precious things and an essential part of the fabric of a nurturing society. So I think I have a strong belief that they can be a powerful um, guide in helping children negotiate the path to independence. I've just added a little bit more there now. I might be out of time now. No, I've still got 2 minutes. And I guess what I've said there is, these are my arguments. That's why I think so. And I've expanded it a little bit to, at the end there, just to talk a bit more about how this relates to broader society. Now, what I'm going to do is go back, because I've got a couple of minutes. Now, instead of trying to write a big long sentence and finishing my essay potentially with an unfinished sentence, because I've only got a minute and a half to go, what I'm actually going to do is just quickly go back and just check my writing a little bit. I'm going to scan over my writing here and see if there's any major problems, if there's any words I might like to change. Right. See here I wrote distracting for stressful. Right, see there was a little mistake I made. Alright, so this is why it's important to go back and check your work, because there's a lot of things you might miss. This is why skimming your own text can be a really good thing to do. Okay. Yeah, I probably could have added a little bit more of a specific example in there, but time's running out, so I'm not going to try and dig up another sentence. So if you look, has been a reasonably well explored essay. I have gone. There's our alarm. All right, so I've got an introduction here. All right, and I've got a body with 3 paragraphs there and a bit of a conclusion at the end. I have developed these ideas. I've got 3 clear ideas. One was finances, one was the study potential, and the other one there was, my belief that you can still be at home and have independence, and then a wrap up at the end, an expansion into, I think, how this is important more broadly. I've got things like concessions to show that I've thought about both sides of the argument. Like here, I did say that, going out and being independent is important for a lot of people. It's a powerful call that we all feel. But I think it depends on a lot of different factors, whether you're going to start a job or whether you're going to go and study at university. And in my thesis, which is my position, I've said that it's better, I think, if in particular, if you're going to study at university or study in general, that you probably would be better off to continue living with your family for a longer time. Notice how I've done things like I've linked in this one here about finances. I've linked finance to study. I probably could have done that a little bit better, but I've certainly explored my argument and presented a variety of arguments. I've regularly considered the other side of the argument, but there you go. I have a reasonably well-developed essay. And I worked through a variety of these things here. Established my position first, what I believed. I did what I call a smart outline. If you go back in the video, you'll see how I just came up with 3 general ideas. An introduction, 3 reasons, and then a quick conclusion. And then I just gradually beefed that up and expanded each one. And because I was going back and rereading each part of it, I was constantly checking my language, constantly checking my topic development. And I think this is one of the key things. A lot of people just they start at the start and then they write their introduction as fast as they can for 5 minutes or something, and then they go and write their next paragraph for 5 minutes. And I actually believe it's better to start with the general things, just general statements, and then to go back and develop each one in turn, then go back again and build in concession statements, constantly review what you've written, support your ideas with specific examples, and just gradually expand each part of your essay so that if you do get confused, if you do run out of time, there's still a nice developed essay there that goes through an introduction, a couple of different reasons, and a conclusion. So it's a bit of a safety device as well as a development device. So something you might like to consider there for your TOEFL independent essay. I hope that sample has been useful for you. You might like to go back through the video and just, if there were any phrases or words that I used there that you think you might like to try and use in your writing, by all means, go back and review the essay and see if you can jot those down and see how I used language, how I used punctuation, how I used clauses, that sort of thing. And I hope that's been really helpful to you. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll join me for another live writing demonstration very soon.